Yet, 9-year-old Lily felt none of the festive warmth. She sat at the edge of a long pew, hands clasped tightly in her lap, her gaze fixed on her father Matthew, standing at the altar. The sun filtered gently through the stained glass windows of the old cathedral, casting colourful shadows across the rows of guests seated in anticipation. The air was filled with the hushed murmurs of wedding guests, the occasional jingle of jewellery, and the soft rustling of satin and lace. To everyone else, this was a beautiful moment. Matthew, a loving father, was finally finding happiness again. But to Lily, it was a scene tinged with suspicion and unease. She glanced nervously around the room, wondering if anyone else could feel the same tension she did. Of course they couldn't. Only she knew what she knew. Lily's mind drifted back to 2 weeks before when she first overheard a strange conversation between her soon-to-be stepmother, Vivian, and a man named Stephen. She had been walking by Vivian's study when she heard voices inside. Lily had stopped just outside the door, curiosity getting the best of her. "Once the policy goes through, there's no need to worry," Vivian had said, in a voice that was too low and too secretive. Stephen's reply was muffled, but the words "insurance payout" and "within weeks" were unmistakable. Lily wasn't sure what it all meant back then, but as she pieced together the snippets she'd overheard in the days that followed, a sense of dread settled deep in her stomach. Vivian, with her perfect smile and graceful movements, had something dark hidden beneath that polished exterior. And Lily was determined to find out exactly what it was. Today, though, was supposed to be a celebration. Vivian looked stunning in her flowing white dress, her auburn hair pinned back with delicate pearls that shimmered in the sunlight. She seemed to float down the aisle, all eyes on her, admiration evident in the faces of every guest. But as Lily watched her, all she felt was a cold, calculating presence lurking behind that beautiful face. Lily's heart raced as she thought about what she needed to do. Her dad deserved happiness, and after years of seeing him alone, she had been hopeful that he'd found love again. But Vivian's secrets hung over Lily like a dark cloud, casting a shadow over what should have been a happy day. She couldn't let her father walk into this marriage blind. As the ceremony began, the priest's voice echoed through the cathedral, his words formal and timeless. Lily felt the weight of her decision bearing down on her. Her father looked over at her once, his gaze softening with a reassuring smile. He had no idea what she had planned. Vivian's voice snapped Lily back to the present. She was exchanging vows now, her words sweet and smooth as honey. "I promise to stand by you, to love and protect you no matter what," Vivian said, her voice unwavering, every syllable perfect. Lily clenched her fists, anger and frustration churning inside her. It was all lies. As they moved to the rings, Lily's pulse quickened. She had thought about this moment 100 times, the words she would say, the strength she would need. But now that it was here, her mouth felt dry, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure everyone could hear it. The priest turned to the congregation. "If anyone has any reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, speak now or forever. Hold your peace." This was her chance. Lily took a deep breath, standing slowly, her small frame feeling even smaller amidst the towering adults around her. She could feel the eyes of every guest turn towards her, confusion flashing across their faces. But she kept her focus on her father, watching as his expression shifted from amusement to concern. "Daddy," she said, her voice wavering but growing stronger with each word. "I need to tell you something about Vivian." The room was silent, a thick, heavy silence that seemed to stretch endlessly. Vivian's face, previously serene,
froze in shock. She glanced at Matthew, her hand gripping his arm tightly, and then turned a withering look at Lily. But Lily refused to back down. Matthew took a step towards her, his brows knit together. "Lily, sweetheart, what's going on?" Lily's voice quivered, but she pushed forward, determined to get the words out. "I heard Vivian talking to a man named Stephen. She was talking about something bad, something about an insurance payout. For you." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd, the atmosphere shifting instantly. Faces filled with shock, and guests exchanged bewildered glances. Matthew's face paled, his mouth opening in stunned silence as he looked back at Vivian. Vivian, who had kept her composure so perfectly throughout the entire ceremony, now looked visibly rattled. "Matthew," she said, forcing a strained smile. "She's just a child. She doesn't understand what she's talking about." But Lily wasn't finished. "I do understand, Vivian. I know what I heard. You're planning something. Something that involves hurting my dad." Her voice was strong now, echoing in the stillness of the room, each word hitting with the force of truth. Vivian's grip tightened on Matthew's arm, her expression shifting from shock to anger. "You're imagining things, Lily," she said, her voice a sharp whisper, though Lily could see the tremor of fear in her eyes. "This is a wedding. It's not the time for childish games." But Matthew held up a hand, silencing her. His gaze flickered back to Lily, a mixture of confusion and fear etched into his face. He knelt down, looking his daughter in the eyes. "Lily, are you sure about what you're saying?" "Yes, Daddy," she replied, a fierce determination in her young voice. "I know I'm right." At that moment, the cathedral doors swung open, and a man stepped inside, dressed in a dark suit and carrying a folder. He looked around, his gaze settling on Vivian, whose face drained of color as she recognized him. It was Stephen. The guests murmured, their whispers filling the room as Stephen walked closer, oblivious to the shocked expressions around him. He stopped short when he saw Lily and Matthew looking back at him, horror dawning on his face as he realized what was happening. Lily's eyes widened in realization, and she pointed at him. "That's him, Daddy! That's the man I heard her talking to!" Matthew stood, his face set in a hard line as he turned to Vivian, betrayal clear in his gaze. Vivian, caught between her fiancé and her co-conspirator, stumbled back a step, her hands shaking. "Matthew, please, it's not what it looks like." But her words fell flat. The truth was out now, unraveling all her careful lies and deceit. Lily felt a surge of relief, mixed with a touch of fear, as she watched her father take a step back from Vivian, his love for her turning to distrust in the space of a heartbeat. Vivian's calm exterior shattered. She glanced around, eyes darting between Matthew, Lily, and the stunned guests, as if searching for an escape. The weight of her lies had finally caught up with her, and there was no way out.
As Vivian stumbled back, the murmurs among the guests grew louder, filling the vast cathedral with a thick tension. Stephen hesitated at the entrance, clearly torn between staying and fleeing. His eyes darted to Vivian, who looked at him with a desperate plea for help. But Stephen shook his head almost imperceptibly. He hadn't expected things to unfold like this, certainly not in front of a crowd. Matthew, standing between his daughter and his fiancée, struggled to piece together the implications of what he'd just heard. His face betrayed a mix of shock, pain, and a glimmer of anger. He turned to Vivian, his voice barely above a whisper, yet strong enough to silence the crowd. "Is this true, Vivian? Is there something you're hiding from me?" Vivian's lips trembled. Her mind raced, trying to formulate a response that might save her from complete humiliation. "Matthew, please, you have to understand." Lily misunderstood. She's a child and children don't always hear things correctly. She tried to inject a lightness into her voice, but the tremor betrayed her, and Matthew's eyes narrowed. Lily took a step forward, her small face full of resolve. "I'm not lying, Daddy. I heard everything. She said you wouldn't even know it was coming, that it would be over fast and leave nothing but a memory." Lily's words struck like a slap, and Vivian's face drained of the last trace of colour. At that moment, Stephen took a cautious step back, seemingly trying to inch his way out of the room unnoticed. But Matthew noticed him, and with a flash of fury, he pointed, "You, come here!" His voice was like steel, and every guest in the room turned to look at Stephen, whose face went from a shade of nervous to ashen in an instant. Caught, Stephen stepped forward reluctantly, avoiding eye contact with anyone, especially Matthew. I don't know what you're talking about," he mumbled, but his voice held no conviction. Lily's gaze bore into him. "You're the man she talked to on the phone. You talked about insurance and something happening to my dad." With his reputation and plans unraveling in front of an audience, Stephen looked to Vivian, who was now visibly trembling. It was clear she was on the verge of a breakdown. She had always prided herself on her ability to keep her emotions in check, but now, faced with the accusation, the suspicion, and the countless eyes upon her, her facade was crumbling. Matthew's gaze swept between Vivian and Stephen, piecing together what Lily had said and what he was now witnessing. He took a deep breath, steadying himself as he addressed Vivian, his voice low and filled with betrayal. "Vivian, I need you to be honest with me, right here, right now. Is there any truth in what Lily is saying?" Vivian opened her mouth, then closed it again, struggling for words. She shot a desperate look at Stephen, who, with a shake of his head, made it clear he was not willing to save her. She was alone. "Yes," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Yes, but it's not what you think." She reached out a trembling hand toward him, but he took a step back. "Matthew, I swear it was only supposed to be a security measure, just something to protect us. I was only trying to make sure that if anything ever happened, I'd be taken care of." Her words came out in a rush, but they only served to deepen Matthew's mistrust. If anything happened. "So, you planned for something to happen, didn't you?" he demanded, his voice now as cold and sharp as broken glass. Vivian shook her head frantically. No, that's not it at all. Stephen suggested it. He said it would be a way to ensure our future. That's all it was, Matthew. You have to believe me." She looked to the guests, as though pleading with them to see her side, but every face in the crowd was filled with judgment, horror, or disgust. "You were going to go through with a plan behind my back, involving a stranger, and somehow I'm supposed to understand." Matthew's voice grew louder, filling the cathedral with an anger Lily had never heard from him before. "This is our wedding day, Vivian, and now you've made it a nightmare." Stephen took a final step back, trying once again to slip away, but Lily noticed. With a fierce determination, she darted forward, grabbing onto his arm. "You're not going anywhere," she said, her small voice brimming with a surprising authority. Stephen looked down at her, startled, and tried to pull away, but Lily's grip tightened. "Daddy, he's the one who convinced her. He's part of this too." A ripple of tension went through the guests, and two of Matthew's friends, seated in the front row, stood up, blocking Stephen's path. Realizing he had no escape, Stephen finally dropped his act, his eyes narrowing as he glared at Vivian. "Don't think I'm taking the fall for this, Vivian," he sneered. "You were the one desperate enough to listen to my suggestions in the first place." Vivian's face twisted with fury and fear. "You offered it to me as a favor," she hissed back. You said it would be easy, that Matthew wouldn't even have to know." "And you believed me," he shot back, his voice dripping with contempt. "You wanted this to happen, Vivian. Don't pretend you didn't." "Enough!" Matthew's voice thundered, silencing the bickering pair. He turned to Vivian, his face as cold and unyielding as stone. "Whatever lies you want to keep telling yourself, save them. You've done enough damage." He looked at Stephen with equal disdain. "And as for you, I'll be contacting the authorities. Don't think you'll walk away from this unscathed." Vivian stumbled backward, finally grasping the gravity of her situation. She looked around the cathedral as if seeing the judgment in every face for the first time. The perfect image she'd crafted for herself, the polished mask, was shattered beyond repair. At that moment, Vivian made a dash for the door, attempting to flee the overwhelming shame and disgrace. But Matthew's friends, who had been keeping an eye on her every move, blocked her path. "You're not going anywhere until we get to the bottom of this," one of them said, his voice stern. Vivian's shoulders sagged as her hope for escape faded. She turned one last pleading look to Matthew, but he met her gaze with a stony silence. It was clear that whatever love or trust he had for her had been irrevocably broken. The guests, now understanding the gravity of what had been uncovered, began murmuring to each other, exchanging horrified glances. Many of them had admired Vivian's charm and grace, never suspecting the dark intentions lying just beneath the surface. The revelation left a bitter taste in the air. Matthew placed a protective arm around Lily, pulling her close. "Lily, I'm sorry," he said softly, his voice breaking as he looked at her. "I should have listened to you. I should have trusted you." Lily hugged him tightly, feeling both relieved and deeply saddened by everything that had unfolded. "It's okay, Daddy," she whispered. "I just didn't want you to get hurt." He looked at her, his eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and sorrow. "Thank you, sweetheart. You were braver than I ever could have imagined." Stephen, seeing no way out, slumped against one of the pews, defeated. Vivian, with nowhere left to turn, stood silently, her face a mask of anguish as she realized the depth of her own actions and the ruin they had brought. The ceremony was over. There would be no wedding today. As father and daughter walked out of the cathedral, the sun casting long shadows over them, Matthew felt a surge of pride in Lily. She had saved him from a terrible mistake, proving herself wise beyond her years. Together they walked toward a future that, while uncertain, was now free from deceit and danger. And as they left, the sounds of whispered conversations and shocked gasps followed them, echoing in the grand cathedral, a reminder of the courage it took for a child to stand up for the truth, no matter the cost. As they walked away from the cathedral, the weight of everything that had happened seemed to press down on both father and daughter. Matthew kept his arm wrapped tightly around Lily's shoulders, drawing strength from her small but fierce presence. The day that was supposed to be a joyful celebration had turned into a catastrophe, a painful reminder of how easily trust could be shattered. After a few minutes of silent walking, they reached Matthew's car. He opened the door for Lily, helping her into the passenger seat before he settled into the driver's side. For a moment, they just sat there, the silence stretching between them as Matthew's mind raced. He was trying to process the whirlwind of emotions, shock, betrayal, relief, and, most of all, an overwhelming gratitude for his daughter's bravery. "Lily," he began, his voice soft, but filled with a kind of reverence. "I can't thank you enough for what you did today. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't spoken up." His voice caught, and he reached over, taking her small hand in his own. "You saved me. You saved us both." Lily looked down, her cheeks flushing with a mixture of pride and relief. I couldn't let her hurt you, Daddy. I didn't want anything bad to happen to you." Her voice trembled as she spoke, and she looked out the window, blinking back tears. "I'm sorry it had to be like this. I know you loved her." A deep sigh escaped Matthew's lips as he squeezed her hand. "Love. That's a complicated thing, Lily. Sometimes we think we love someone, but it turns out we were just seeing what we wanted to see. I thought Vivian was someone she wasn't. You saw the truth when I couldn't?" He let out a small, humorless laugh. "I guess that makes you the wisest one here." For a long while they sat in the car, Matthew's thoughts drifting back to the early days when he first met Vivian. She had seemed so warm, so understanding, someone who genuinely cared about him and Lily. He had been lonely, wanting someone to share his life with, and Vivian had seemed like the answer to that silent longing. But now he realized how much he had overlooked, how much he had missed, because he had wanted it all to be true. That need had blinded him to the reality. Finally, he started the car, and they drove home in silence, both lost in their own thoughts. The usually comforting surroundings of their neighborhood, with its familiar trees and quiet streets, felt strange now, as if tainted by what they had just been through. When they got home, Matthew unlocked the front door, and they stepped into the warmth of their house. It was usually a place filled with laughter, where Matthew and Lily shared stories over dinner, played games on lazy afternoons, and read books together before bedtime. But today it felt subdued, a quiet reminder of the day's painful revelations. "Why don't we get comfortable and have some tea?" Matthew suggested gently, trying to bring a little normalcy back. "I think we both need it." Lily nodded, following him into the kitchen. She watched as he filled the kettle with water, his hands moving methodically, almost as if the familiar task could keep his mind from wandering back to the disaster at the cathedral. When the water boiled, he poured 2 cups and handed one to Lily before sitting down at the small kitchen table across from her. They sipped in silence, the steam curling up between them. Matthew searched for the right words to reassure her, but he realized there was something he needed to address first. "Lily," he said quietly, setting down his cup, "I want you to know that I'll never doubt you again. If you feel something is wrong, I'll listen. Today showed me just how much I can trust you." Lily looked up, her eyes filled with gratitude and relief. "Thank you, Daddy. I know you wanted to believe in her. I couldn't let it go. I kept thinking about everything she said, and I was so scared something bad was going to happen to you." She paused, her eyes clouding with worry. Do you think she'll try to come back? To hurt us?" Matthew considered her question, his gaze turning hard as he thought of Vivian. "I don't know, Lily. But if she does, I promise you, I'll do whatever it takes to keep you safe. We'll deal with it together." His voice was firm, his resolve solidifying. He wouldn't let Vivian's betrayal cast a shadow over their lives any longer. They finished their tea in silence, a feeling of calm slowly settling over them. Eventually, Matthew decided it was time to face the reality of what had happened and called his lawyer to discuss the best way to handle things. As he spoke quietly on the phone, Lily wandered into the living room, her gaze landing on the framed photos lining the walls, pictures of her and her father at various points in their lives, smiling and carefree. She felt a renewed sense of gratitude for the bond they shared, one that, no matter what, couldn't be broken by deceit or lies. That night, after dinner, they sat on the couch together, wrapped in a warm silence. Matthew put his arm around Lily, pulling her close. You know, kiddo, sometimes the hardest thing we have to do is see people for who they really are. It hurts, but in the end, it's better than living with lies. And thanks to you, we're free from that now." Lily rested her head on his shoulder, feeling safe and reassured. "I love you, Daddy," she whispered. "I love you too, sweetheart." "More than anything in the world," he replied, pressing a gentle kiss to the top of her head. The next few days passed quietly, and although the incident at the wedding still weighed heavily on both of them, they began to find solace in their routines. Matthew worked from home, using the time to focus on rebuilding his life and reconnecting with friends and family who had shown concern after hearing about the wedding fiasco. One evening, about a week later, there was a knock on the door. Matthew, who had been reading on the couch while Lily played nearby, frowned. They weren't expecting anyone, and the lateness of the hour made him uneasy. He motioned for Lily to stay put as he went to the door, peering cautiously through the peephole. To his surprise, he saw a police officer standing on the porch. Matthew opened the door slowly, a sense of foreboding washing over him. "Good evening, officer. Can I help you?" he asked, keeping his voice steady. The officer nodded, his expression neutral but professional. "Mr. Taylor, I'm here to inform you that we've taken both Vivian Summers and her associate, Stephen Lake, into custody. We have reason to believe they were planning an insurance fraud scheme, and given the information provided by a few of your wedding guests, we've built a solid case against them." Matthew exhaled, a wave of relief washing over him. "Thank you for letting me know, officer. I'm grateful to hear that they won't be causing us any more trouble." The officer offered a nod of understanding. "They're facing multiple charges, including attempted fraud. With the evidence we have, they'll likely face a significant penalty." He paused, glancing into the house where he could see Lily's curious face peeking around the corner. "I just want to say, your daughter was very brave. It takes a lot of courage to stand up and do the right thing." Matthew glanced back at Lily, a proud smile spreading across his face. "She certainly is. Thank you, officer." With a polite nod, the officer took his leave, and Matthew closed the door, locking it behind him. He turned to Lily, who had been listening intently. "They're in custody, Lily. They won't be bothering us again." A mixture of relief and pride washed over Lily's face. She ran to her father, wrapping her arms around him in a tight hug. "I'm glad, Daddy. I'm glad it's finally over." As they stood together in the quiet of their home, an unspoken understanding passed between them. They had been through something difficult, something that had tested their trust and love, but in the end they had emerged stronger, more united than ever. In that moment, Matthew knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, he and Lily could face them together. They were each other's safe place, their unbreakable bond a shield against whatever life might throw their way. And as he held his daughter close, he felt a sense of peace, knowing that they had a future to look forward to, one filled with truth, trust, and the kind of love that could never be tarnished by lies. The weeks that followed were quieter, almost too quiet, as Matthew and Lily adjusted to their new normal. Despite the relief of knowing Vivian and Stephen were in custody, a lingering unease remained, a residue of betrayal that neither could completely shake. But Matthew was determined to rebuild their life, one step at a time. One morning, while sitting in the kitchen sipping coffee, Matthew received an unexpected call from his lawyer, Jonathan. "Matthew," Jonathan began, his tone cautious, "I have some updates regarding Vivian's case. Would you have a moment to come by the office today? I think it's best we go over everything in person." Matthew's stomach tightened, but he forced himself to stay calm. "Of course, Jonathan. I'll be there as soon as I can." He hung up, trying to keep his voice steady as he spoke to Lily. Sweetheart, I have to run a quick errand, but I'll be back soon. I'll call Mrs. Grant to come over and keep you company, okay? Lily looked up from the book she was reading, giving him a small, understanding smile. Okay, Daddy, I'll be fine. A short while later, Matthew was seated across from Jonathan in his law office. Jonathan's expression was serious, his brows furrowed as he flipped through a file on his desk. So, as you know, Vivian and Stephen are being charged with attempted insurance fraud, but there's more. The police uncovered additional evidence, suggesting this wasn't the first time they had targeted someone in this way. What do you mean? Matthew asked, his voice strained. Jonathan sighed. It appears Vivian and Stephen have a history of similar schemes. They've pulled this sort of con before, but somehow managed to slip through legal loopholes. This time, however, there's overwhelming evidence against them, thanks in large part to Lily's testimony and the timing of the intervention at the wedding. Matthew felt a mixture of shock and anger rise within him. He'd always sensed there was something darker beneath Vivian's polished exterior, but he hadn't imagined this level of deception. And what does this mean for their sentencing? With the prior history now coming to light, Jonathan replied, it's likely they'll be facing serious jail time. It's unlikely they'll have any chance of parole for years. He paused, a look of sympathy crossing his face. I know this has been difficult for you and Lily, Matthew, but there's some comfort in knowing justice is being served. Matthew nodded slowly, absorbing the information. He hadn't realized just how close he and Lily had come to a potential disaster, and in a way that realization made him even more grateful for Lily's courage. She had saved them both from a far more dangerous future. Matthew turned off the light, feeling a sense of peace settle over him as he watched her drift off to sleep. He understood now that real love was patient and kind, something that couldn't be forced or faked. And as he closed the door to her room, he felt hopeful for the future, knowing he and Lily would walk into it side by side, ready for whatever came their way. As winter approached, the crisp air and snow-dusted streets made their town feel like something out of a storybook. Emily continued to be a comforting presence in their lives, bringing warmth and joy to their home. For the first time in what felt like forever, Matthew found himself looking forward to the holiday season, eager to spend it with his daughter and their new friend. One evening, as they gathered around the fireplace, Emily brought up the idea of visiting the town's Christmas market. They have carolers, hot chocolate, and the biggest tree you've ever seen, Lily, she said, her eyes twinkling with excitement. Lily's eyes widened, practically glowing with excitement. Can we go, Daddy? Please? Matthew laughed, nodding. Of course we can go. I think it sounds wonderful. That weekend, bundled up in scarves and mittens, they made their way to the Christmas market. The sound of carolers filled the air, and the scent of cinnamon and roasted chestnuts wafted from the stalls. They wandered through the market, sipping hot chocolate, admiring the festive lights, and laughing as they watched Lily's face light up at every turn. Emily and Matthew exchanged smiles as they watched Lily, both feeling a sense of gratitude for the simple moments of joy they were able to share. At one point, Emily reached out, taking Matthew's hand in her own. He looked down, surprised, but her warm smile reassured him. In that moment, standing under the twinkling lights of the town's enormous Christmas tree, Matthew felt a new chapter unfolding, one filled with love, trust, and healing. For him and Lily, it was the start of a beautiful future, a testament to their courage and the unbreakable bond they shared. The joy of the holidays gradually melted into the quiet peace of winter as Matthew, Lily, and Emily continued building their shared memories, finding comfort in a routine that now included each other. Emily's gentle kindness and unwavering warmth had become something Matthew relied on, something Lily looked forward to with a child's innocent devotion. On a crisp Saturday morning, they decided to go ice skating at the local rink. Matthew and Lily had always loved their weekend trips there, though they had rarely gone the past year. But now, with Emily joining them, the day felt infused with a sense of newness. As they arrived, the ice rink was lively with the sound of skates gliding, laughter, and the occasional tumble, followed by cheers of encouragement. The world outside seemed far away, and for Matthew, the weight of everything that had happened months ago felt more like a fading memory. They laced up their skates, and Lily bounded onto the ice with a grace that left both adults chuckling. "Look at her go," Emily laughed, watching Lily weave skillfully around the other skaters. "She's practically flying," Matthew said, a mix of pride and amazement in his voice. They skated side by side, Emily occasionally stumbling and gripping Matthew's arm for balance, which only brought about fits of laughter. They spent hours there, whirling and laughing until they were rosy-cheeked from both the cold and the joy. When they finally left, it was with tired legs and bright smiles, and they ended the afternoon warming up over hot chocolate and marshmallows at a nearby cafe. As they sat together, sipping their drinks, Lily leaned close to Matthew and whispered, "Daddy, do you think Emily can come over for dinner tomorrow? I can help make spaghetti." Matthew grinned, his heart full at her request. "I think that's a great idea." "Emily?" Emily smiled, her eyes sparkling with affection. "I'd love that, Lily, and I make a pretty mean garlic bread. Maybe we can cook together." The next evening, they gathered in the kitchen, Lily at the stove with Matthew, helping stir the sauce as Emily chopped fresh herbs. Their laughter echoed through the house as they cooked, filling the space with warmth and a sense of belonging. After dinner, they all gathered around the living room, Emily and Matthew sipping wine, while Lily curled up beside them with a storybook. Emily glanced over, noticing Lily's sleepy eyes drifting over the pages, and leaned in to whisper to Matthew, "Looks like she might not make it through the story." She chuckled softly, the tender fondness clear in her voice. Matthew nodded, his own heart swelling as he looked at his daughter, nestled happily against Emily. "This is the happiest she's been in a long time," he whispered back. They exchanged a look, one filled with understanding and a spark of hope for what might be unfolding between them. Later, after they tucked Lily into bed, Matthew and Emily lingered by the door, both reluctant to say goodbye. Matthew, feeling a sudden surge of courage, reached out to take Emily's hand. "Stay a little longer?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Emily's smile was warm, her gaze steady as she nodded. They moved to the couch, sitting together in the comforting quiet of the living room, the weight of unspoken words filling the space between them. At last, Matthew turned to her, his voice soft and filled with gratitude. "Emily, I don't think I could have gotten through all of this without you." She reached over, placing a gentle hand on his arm. "You're stronger than you know, Matthew. You and Lily both. But I'm glad to be here. It means more than you can imagine." He looked at her, the words coming unbidden but true. "I'm lucky to have you. We both are." The closeness between them, built over shared moments and trust, was undeniable. The distance between them faded as he leaned forward, brushing a gentle kiss to her lips. Emily's hand found his, and in that simple touch, Matthew felt the first stirrings of something new, something real. In the months that followed, Emily became an even greater presence in their lives. She wasn't just a visitor anymore, she had become a cherished part of their small family. Lily grew attached to her, often running to Emily with news of her day, or requesting her presence at bedtime to read her favorite stories. The three of them slipped into an easy, natural rhythm that brought laughter, comfort, and a sense of peace Matthew hadn't felt in years. As spring began to bloom, Lily's school held its annual spring festival, and she was thrilled to have both her father and Emily there to watch her perform in a small skit her class had prepared. Dressed as a little flower, Lily recited her lines with the grace and poise of a natural performer, her beaming smile filling both Matthew and Emily with pride. When she took her final bow, she rushed off the stage, running straight into Matthew's arms. He spun her around, both of them laughing as he congratulated her. Emily crouched down beside them, hugging Lily tightly. "You were fantastic, Lily," she praised, and the young girl glowed under the attention, soaking up every bit of their love and pride. That night, after the festival, as they walked home under a canopy of stars, Lily looked up at them, her small hand nestled securely between Matthew and Emily's. "You know," she said, her voice full of youthful confidence, "we make a really good team." Matthew chuckled, squeezing her hand. "Yes, we do. The best team." As they walked, the conversation turned to lighter topics, from favorite animals to plans for the weekend. But beneath it all, Matthew couldn't help but feel the truth in Lily's words. They were a team, a family in every way that mattered. One evening, after Lily had gone to bed, Matthew and Emily sat together in the quiet of the living room. They had reached a point where their relationship felt like an unspoken promise, something built on trust, patience, and a deep understanding that went beyond words. Emily looked over at Matthew, her face soft with a question she had been holding back. "Matthew, have you thought about what comes next?" she asked gently. He looked at her, understanding what she was asking. After everything that had happened, he had hesitated to move forward, not wanting to make promises he wasn't sure he could keep. But now, sitting beside her, he knew he was ready to start that new chapter. He reached for her hand, his voice steady and full of resolve. "Yes, I have. I want this, us, to be real. I want you to be a part of our lives, officially." Emily's eyes softened, a smile spreading across her face as she squeezed his hand. "I'd love that, Matthew. Nothing would make me happier." In the weeks that followed, they shared the news with Lily, who couldn't have been more delighted. She jumped up and down, hugging Emily with all the love and trust of a child who had finally found the family she'd always wanted. For Lily, having Emily in their lives felt as natural as breathing, and she welcomed the change with open arms. And so Matthew and Emily began their new life together, each day filled with the simple joy of a family bound by love and trust. They celebrated holidays, birthdays, and milestones together, creating new traditions that blended seamlessly with the old. As time passed, Matthew found himself marveling at how far they had come. Vivian's betrayal was a distant memory now, a painful chapter that he and Lily had closed together. Emily had brought light and laughter into their home, healing the wounds of the past with her kindness and unwavering support. One summer evening, as they sat outside watching the sunset, Lily turned to them, her face thoughtful. "Daddy, Emily, do you think we're lucky?" Matthew and Emily exchanged a smile, both understanding the depth of her question. "Yes, Lily," Matthew replied, his voice filled with emotion. "I think we're the luckiest people in the world." Emily wrapped an arm around Lily, pulling her close. "Sometimes life gives us challenges, but those challenges make us stronger. And in the end, we find the people we're meant to be with. That's what makes us so lucky." They sat together, watching the sky turn shades of pink and orange, the warmth of their shared love filling the silence. For Matthew, the journey had been long and difficult, but it had led him to a place of happiness and peace he hadn't thought possible. And with Emily and Lily by his side, he knew they were ready to face whatever the future held, as a family bound by the strength of love and resilience. As the months unfolded into a comfortable rhythm, the bond between Matthew, Emily, and Lily only grew stronger. By summer, they had become inseparable, a family in every sense of the word. Days were filled with simple joys, picnics at the park, movie nights under soft blankets, and impromptu baking sessions in the kitchen, where Lily always insisted on adding just a little extra sugar to make the cookies perfect. But alongside the laughter and love, Matthew often found himself reflecting on the journey they had taken to reach this point. He remembered the hesitation he'd felt in the early days with Emily, his fear of opening his heart again after Vivian's betrayal. And he marveled at how Emily had eased that fear with her unwavering patience and kindness, bringing light into both his and Lily's lives. One warm afternoon, they decided to venture out for a beach day. Lily's excitement was contagious as she packed her beach bag, insisting on bringing both her sandcastle kit and an entire collection of seashells she'd gathered the previous summer. Emily and Matthew chuckled as she carefully counted each shell, making sure not a single one was left behind. When they arrived at the beach, Lily ran toward the waves, her laughter carrying on the breeze as she waded in, kicking up tiny splashes that glistened in the sun. Matthew and Emily set up their spot under a large umbrella, spreading out a blanket and unpacking a cooler filled with sandwiches and fresh fruit. Watching Lily play in the surf, Matthew turned to Emily with a smile. "She's so happy," he said, a hint of wonder in his voice. Emily leaned her head on his shoulder, watching Lily with a gentle smile. "She has every reason to be. She has you, Matthew, and now she has us." They sat in comfortable silence, feeling the warmth of the sun and the soft caress of the ocean breeze. Matthew reached over, lacing his fingers with Emily's, silently expressing the gratitude he felt every day for the life they were building together. After an hour of splashing and playing in the waves, Lily returned to the blanket, her cheeks flushed and eyes sparkling with excitement. She settled between Matthew and Emily, picking up one of her seashells and examining it closely. "Daddy, Emily," she said, her voice serious but full of curiosity. "Do you think we could make a big sandcastle like the ones in the movies?" Emily smiled, her eyes twinkling with mischief. "I think that sounds like a challenge. Let's make the biggest sandcastle this beach has ever seen." With that, the three of them set to work, piling sand and carefully shaping towers, walls, and a moat. Lily's laughter rang out as they built, her joy infectious. Matthew couldn't remember the last time he had felt so free, so unburdened by the past. It was as though each scoop of sand, each laugh, each stolen glance with Emily was helping to lay a new foundation, a fresh start. As the sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting golden hues across the water, they stood back to admire their creation. The sandcastle was grand, complete with seashell decorations that Lily had carefully arranged along the walls. "This is the best sandcastle ever," Lily declared, clapping her hands together with satisfaction. Matthew wrapped an arm around Emily, his heart swelling with love and pride. "It sure is. And it was built by the best team ever." They stayed at the beach until dusk, watching the waves gently lap against the shore, erasing traces of their footprints, but leaving behind a day of memories they would cherish forever. On the drive home, Lily fell asleep in the back seat, her head resting on her beach bag, a small, contented smile on her face. When they arrived home, Matthew gently lifted her from the car and carried her upstairs to her bed, tucking her in with a soft kiss on her forehead. He lingered for a moment, looking at his daughter's peaceful face, marveling at how much love and courage she carried in her heart. She had endured so much, and yet here she was, thriving and growing, full of laughter and trust. He knew he had her to thank for leading him to Emily, for giving him the courage to open his heart again. A few weeks later, Lily's school announced a family day where parents and guardians were invited to spend the afternoon participating in games and activities with their children. Lily was thrilled, excitedly telling Matthew and Emily all about the events she hoped they'd join. When the day arrived, they made their way to the school, greeted by the lively sounds of children playing, music in the background, and the smell of popcorn and cotton candy. Lily took each of them by the hand, leading them from one booth to the next with the energy and enthusiasm only a child could muster. They played ring toss, competed in a sack race, Lily won with flying colours, and tried their hand at a few carnival games. When they reached the face-painting station, Lily grinned up at Emily. "Can we all get matching face paint?" Emily laughed, nodding. "What should we paint on our faces?" Lily thought for a moment, tapping her chin thoughtfully. "How about stars? Then we'll all match." Soon enough, the three of them had small, sparkling stars painted on their cheeks. They laughed as they took a picture together, their faces bright and shining under the afternoon sun. It was a moment of pure happiness, a memory that would stay with them forever. As the family day drew to a close, one of Lily's classmates came over, waving shyly. "Hi, Lily," he said, glancing curiously at Matthew and Emily. "Are these your parents?" Lily nodded proudly. "This is my dad," she said, gesturing to Matthew. "And this is Emily. She's my family too." Matthew and Emily exchanged a smile, touched by the way Lily had so easily included Emily in her definition of family. It was a small, simple affirmation, but it filled them both with a deep sense of belonging. On the walk home, Lily chatted animatedly about all the fun they'd had, her voice filled with joy and laughter. As they reached their doorstep, she turned to them, her face thoughtful. "You know, today was perfect. I think it was one of my favorite days ever." Matthew knelt down beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I think it was one of my favorite days too, sweetheart. Thank you for being such an amazing part of it." Emily placed a gentle hand on Lily's shoulder, her smile warm. "You make every day brighter, Lily." Lily beamed, wrapping her arms around both of them in a tight hug. "I love you both," she whispered, her voice filled with sincerity. That night, as Matthew and Emily sat together on the porch, watching the stars, Matthew took a deep breath, his gaze turning thoughtful. "Emily, I've been thinking about us, about Lily, and about the future." Emily looked at him, her eyes soft and understanding. "What are you thinking?" He hesitated for a moment, gathering his thoughts. "I'm thinking that I want you to be a permanent part of our lives. Officially." He reached into his pocket, pulling out a small box. Opening it, he revealed a simple, elegant ring. Emily's eyes widened, her hand covering her mouth in surprise. "Matthew." He took her hand, his voice filled with emotion. "Emily, you've brought so much love, trust, and joy into our lives. You've shown me that it's okay to hope, to love, and to build something real. Will you marry me?" Tears filled Emily's eyes, her smile radiant as she nodded. "Yes, Matthew. Yes, I will." They embraced, their love a promise of the life they would share. And as they held each other under the starlit sky, Matthew knew that he had finally found his way home, to a place filled with truth, laughter, and the unwavering love of family. The following morning, they gathered around the kitchen table to tell Lily the news. She looked at them with wide eyes, her face lighting up as she understood. "Emily's going to be my mum," she asked, a hopeful smile spreading across her face. Matthew nodded, his heart swelling with pride and love. "Yes, sweetheart, Emily's going to be your mum." Lily squealed in delight, throwing her arms around Emily. "I've always wanted this. I'm so happy." Emily hugged her tightly, her own eyes shimmering with tears. "I'm so happy too, Lily. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me." As they sat together, the three of them sharing laughter and plans for the future, they knew that they had found something precious, a true family, bound not by blood but by choice, love, and a shared journey of hope and resilience. They were ready to face whatever lay ahead, knowing that together they could overcome anything. And as they looked at each other, their smiles bright and full of joy, they knew that their love was strong enough to last a lifetime. As the news of their engagement settled in, the next few weeks became a flurry of excitement. Friends and family gathered around them, each one offering their congratulations and well wishes. Emily moved in with Matthew and Lily, transforming their house into a lively home filled with the sound of laughter and the warmth of love. Lily was thrilled with the preparations for the upcoming wedding. She took her new role as flower girl and assistant wedding planner very seriously, spending afternoons with Emily and Matthew as they discussed everything from flowers to invitations. Her enthusiasm was boundless, and she'd eagerly rush home from school each day, asking, "What can we plan today?" Her favorite part, though, was helping Emily pick out her wedding dress. On the day they went to the bridal shop, Lily couldn't contain her excitement. She sat patiently as Emily tried on several dresses, each one more beautiful than the last. But when Emily walked out in a gown that was simple yet elegant, with delicate lace details and a soft, flowing skirt, Lily's eyes widened and she clapped her hands in delight. "That's the one!" she exclaimed, her voice filled with certainty. "You look just like a princess." Emily smiled, her own eyes misting with emotion as she saw herself through Lily's eyes. She turned to Matthew, who had been sitting nearby, giving him a look that said more than words ever could. Matthew nodded, a soft smile on his lips, as he took in the sight of Emily and Lily together. This was everything he had hoped for, a vision of family and happiness that felt like a beautiful dream come true. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, their life settled into a warm, happy routine. Evenings were spent at home, where they cooked meals together, shared stories about their day, and made plans for the future. It was in these quiet moments, surrounded by love and laughter, that Matthew realized just how far they had all come. One Friday evening, as they gathered for dinner, Lily had an idea that brought even more excitement into the house. "Daddy, Emily," she began, her eyes sparkling, "can we make a time capsule, like with things that are special to us, and bury it in the backyard?" Matthew chuckled, sharing an amused glance with Emily. "A time capsule, huh? I think that's a wonderful idea. What would we put in it?" Lily's face lit up as she began listing items that each of them could add. "We could put in some of my favorite shells from the beach, maybe one of Emily's bracelets, and Daddy, you could put in something from when you were younger. That way, we'll have memories from everyone." The next evening, they gathered their items for the time capsule. Lily placed one of her most prized seashells inside, a beautiful white one she'd found on a special beach day, with Emily and Matthew. Emily added a bracelet she had worn on their first date, a simple silver charm bracelet that held so many memories. And Matthew, after some thought, placed a small folded note in the capsule. It was a letter to Lily and Emily, words of love and gratitude that he wanted them to discover someday in the future. They buried the capsule in a corner of the backyard under the big oak tree, marking the spot with a small stone. As they stood around it, holding hands, a sense of peace and unity filled the air. It was more than just a collection of items. It was a testament to the love that had brought them all together and a promise of the future they would share. Finally, the wedding day arrived. It was a sunny, clear morning with a gentle breeze that seemed to carry with it a feeling of joy and anticipation. The ceremony was held in a beautiful garden surrounded by flowers and greenery. Friends and family gathered, each person touched by the love that radiated from Matthew, Emily, and Lily. Lily was dressed in a lovely white dress with a flower crown, her face glowing with happiness as she took her role as flower girl. She walked down the aisle ahead of Emily, scattering petals with each step, her heart full of joy. When she reached the end of the aisle, she looked back, her eyes shining as she watched Emily make her way toward Matthew. Emily's dress flowed with her every step, her face radiant as she met Matthew's gaze. The love and happiness in his eyes filled her with warmth, and she knew that this was exactly where she was meant to be. As she took his hand, they exchanged a smile that spoke of shared dreams and promises. The vows they shared were simple but deeply heartfelt. Matthew spoke first, his voice filled with emotion. "Emily, you've brought light and love into my life in ways I never imagined. You've taught me to trust again, to believe in happiness. With you, I am home. I promise to be by your side, to cherish you, and to love you with all that I am today and always." Emily's voice trembled with emotion as she replied, "Matthew, you've shown me what real love is. You and Lily are my heart, my family. I promise to stand with you, to support you, and to love you with all my heart. Together we are stronger, and together we are complete." As they exchanged rings, Lily watched from her spot, her face a picture of pride and happiness. She felt like the luckiest girl in the world, standing there with her family. When the ceremony ended and Matthew and Emily shared their first kiss, as husband and wife, the guests erupted into cheers, each one moved by the beauty of the love they had witnessed. The reception that followed was filled with laughter, dancing, and celebration. Matthew and Emily shared their first dance as husband and wife, swaying together under the warm glow of twinkling lights. Lily joined them, twirling around with joy, her laughter ringing out as her parents held her close. Later in the evening, Lily made her way to the microphone, her cheeks flushed with excitement. She looked out at the guests, her heart pounding with anticipation. "I just wanted to say thank you to my dad and to Emily. You've made me the happiest girl ever. I love you both so much." She paused, her voice soft but clear. "And I'm so glad we're a family now." Tears shimmered in Emily's eyes, and Matthew wrapped an arm around his daughter, pulling her close. The guests applauded, and Lily's heartfelt words filled the room with an even deeper sense of warmth and joy. As the night wound down and the last guests said their goodbyes, Matthew, Emily, and Lily sat together under the stars, wrapped in blankets and the glow of shared happiness. They talked about their favorite moments of the day, their voices soft and full of contentment. "Today was like a dream," Emily whispered, resting her head on Matthew's shoulder. "It was perfect," he agreed, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. He looked down at Lily, who was nestled between them, her eyes heavy with sleep, but a smile still on her face. As they sat there, surrounded by love and laughter, Matthew realized that this was everything he had ever wanted. The journey had been difficult, filled with moments of doubt and heartache, but it had led him here, to this beautiful life with Emily and Lily. The time capsule buried under the oak tree held memories of the past, but Matthew knew that the best was yet to come. Together they would continue building memories, facing challenges, and celebrating each victory, big and small. In the quiet of that evening, with the stars shining above, Matthew knew that he had finally found his forever, a family bound by love, trust, and the courage to build a life together. And he knew deep in his heart that no matter what the future held, they would face it side by side as a family that nothing could ever break. As the days turned into weeks, the warmth of their new life together continued to grow, each day deepening the bond they shared. They fell into a rhythm that felt natural and right, each morning filled with the simple rituals that wove them closer together, from sharing breakfast around the kitchen table to evening walks under the stars. And with each passing day, Emily and Lily grew closer, their connection blossoming like the first flowers of spring. One weekend afternoon, while Lily was out with her friends, Matthew and Emily found themselves alone in the house, a rare moment of quiet in their busy lives. They sat together in the living room, sipping tea and talking about the future. Emily looked over at Matthew, her face soft with a gentle thoughtfulness. "Matthew," she began, her voice quiet, but full of anticipation, "I've been thinking, I'd love to make this place feel even more like home. Maybe we could add a few things to the house, a small garden perhaps?" Matthew smiled, picturing the scene she described. He could see the two of them working together, planting flowers and vegetables, creating a little oasis in their backyard. "I love that idea," he replied. "I can see Lily getting excited about it too. She'd probably want to plant her own patch of flowers." Emily laughed, her eyes bright with excitement. "And maybe she can have a little spot to grow her favorite plants. I think it would be something we could all enjoy together." They spent the next hour planning out their vision for the garden, sketching out spaces for flowers, vegetables, and even a small bird bath. As they discussed each detail, Matthew felt a deep sense of contentment settling over him. Building a home, a true family life with Emily and Lily, felt like the culmination of a journey he had once thought impossible. The following weekend, the three of them set to work on the garden. They bought seedlings, bags of soil and tools, and spent the day under the warm sun, digging, planting, and laughing as they created their little haven. Lily's laughter filled the air as she dug small holes for her flowers, carefully planting each one with the care of a young gardener. "This one's going to be my favorite," she declared, patting down the soil around a bright pink daisy. "I'll call her Daisy." Matthew chuckled, shaking his head with amusement. "You're already naming them?" "Of course, Daddy, they're special," she replied, her face serious. Emily knelt beside her, helping arrange the flowers in neat rows, adding small, decorative stones around the plants. "I think Daisy's going to be very happy here." "You're doing a wonderful job, Lily." The garden took shape over the following weeks, each plant growing strong and vibrant under their care. It became a place where they would spend lazy afternoons, sitting together, reading and sharing stories. For Lily, it was a world of wonder where she would search for ladybugs, chase butterflies, and eagerly water her flowers every day. And for Matthew and Emily, it was a sanctuary of love, a space that symbolized the life they were building together. One evening, as they sat in the garden under a starlit sky, Lily looked up at them, her face thoughtful. "Daddy, Emily," she began, "do you think we'll always have our garden, even when I'm grown up?" Matthew smiled, his heart full as he reached for her hand. "Yes, sweetheart. Our garden will always be here, just like our family. It's a part of us now." Emily wrapped her arm around Lily, pulling her close. "And no matter where life takes you, you'll always have this place to come back to. It's our forever home." Lily's eyes sparkled with happiness as she leaned into them, feeling the warmth of their love surrounding her. In that moment, she understood that family wasn't just about being together, it was about creating something that would last, something strong and unbreakable. As the summer wore on, they created more memories in that garden, each day adding to the story of their lives. And though the seasons would change, each one bringing its own challenges and joys, they knew that this foundation they had built together would hold them steady, guiding them through whatever lay ahead. As summer gradually gave way to the first signs of fall, the small family continued to grow closer, embracing every moment together. Their life was filled with warmth and shared routines, from mornings spent cooking breakfast to evenings watching movies under cozy blankets. The garden they had built became a beloved part of their home, a symbol of their journey together. It was a testament to the resilience and love that had brought them through so much and into a life of stability, peace, and happiness. One crisp autumn evening, they decided to host a small gathering in the garden, inviting a few close friends and family members to celebrate the season and all the beauty it had brought into their lives. They decorated the garden with fairy lights and pumpkins, the soft glow of candles adding a magical atmosphere. Lily was thrilled, rushing around to make sure every detail was perfect, from setting out blankets to arranging a small table of treats. As their friends arrived, the evening was filled with laughter and conversation. Everyone gathered under the starlit sky, sipping hot cider and reminiscing about the memories they had shared. Matthew watched Lily move between the guests, her face alight with joy as she handed out cookies she and Emily had baked earlier. He could see the confidence that had blossomed within her, the way she welcomed each person with open arms and a warm smile. She had grown so much, and he was endlessly proud of her. As the night wound down, Matthew gathered everyone together for a toast. He held his glass high, his voice filled with gratitude. To family, love, and new beginnings. Thank you all for being a part of our lives and for sharing in this journey with us. The clinking of glasses and murmurs of agreement filled the air as everyone raised their glasses, celebrating the love and strength that had carried them all this far. It was a perfect ending to a beautiful evening, one filled with the kind of warmth and peace that only true family and friends could bring. Later that night, as they cleaned up together, Lily looked up at her parents with a small, hopeful smile. Can we do this every year? Emily wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close. Absolutely, sweetheart. It can be our tradition. Matthew looked down at his daughter, his heart full. We'll have a lot more traditions, Lily, ones that will last a lifetime. In the months that followed, the changing seasons brought new adventures, and with them, deeper love and appreciation for the family they had become. There were quiet winter nights by the fire, where they shared stories and laughed over mugs of hot chocolate. Spring mornings spent adding fresh flowers to their beloved garden, and lazy summer afternoons where they lounged in the shade, watching the butterflies flit around their blooms. Through it all, they grew even closer, their bond strengthened by the shared joys and challenges that life brought. Lily continued to thrive, her confidence blossoming as she embraced each day with the love and support of her parents. And Emily and Matthew's love deepened, grounded in the trust and resilience they had built together. As the years went by, their garden continued to grow, a living testament to the love and care they poured into it. Each season brought new blooms and new memories, reminding them of the journey that had brought them here. It was a place they could always return to, a sanctuary where love and laughter flourished. Now, as they sat together in their garden on yet another beautiful evening, the stars twinkling above them, they looked back on everything they had been through. It was more than they could have ever imagined. And yet, in each other's company, it felt like exactly where they were meant to be. And so to all of you who have been a part of this journey with us. Thank you. Whether you're new here or have been following our story from the beginning, your support has meant the world to us. We hope that our journey has brought a little warmth, hope, and inspiration into your life. If you enjoyed our story and want to see more tales of resilience, family, and love, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this story, so please leave a comment below and share your own experiences with love, family, or finding new beginnings. Thank you for being here, for sharing in our lives, and for allowing us to share a bit of ourselves with you. Here's to family, love, and the beautiful journey ahead, one we hope to continue sharing with all of you.